Gym bullies wear their belts like crowns and their rank like armor. They prey on the smaller ones, the quieter ones, the ones who came to learn discipline and instead found themselves swallowed by another man's ego. They hide behind mat etiquette and instructor politics, and they get away with it because nobody wants to be the person who calls out the black belt. But every so often, a predator like that reaches too far. He picks the wrong girl on the wrong night, and standing quietly by the door is somebody he was never supposed to meet. This isn't a story about sport jiu-jitsu. This is a story about what happens when a bully accidentally drags a ghost out of the shadows and onto his mats. The training floor at Iron Line Combat Academy had a smell to it that regular members stopped noticing years ago. Sweat baked into the vinyl, the sharp chemical tang of disinfectant spray, the faint copper note of blood from someone's split lip earlier in the week. The overhead LEDs buzzed a flat white glare across the mat, washing every color out of the room. It was 7:14 on a Tuesday evening, and the intermediate class was 15 minutes into open rolls. Emma sat on the edge of the mat, retying her belt for the third time. She was 27, a purple belt with 3 stripes, small framed at 5'4" and maybe 128 pounds after a heavy meal. She had come to jiu-jitsu 3 years ago after a bad breakup and a worse year, looking for something that would force her to be present. She had found it. She had also found the bruises, the finger sprains, the ribs that clicked when she breathed too deeply, and the quiet pride of being the only woman in the advanced class who never quit around. Across the mat, Marcus was doing what Marcus always did. He was standing with his arms folded, holding forth to a cluster of white belts about his last super fight, about the guy whose arm he had almost broken in Vegas, about how modern jiu-jitsu had gone soft. Marcus was a black belt, a big one, 6'2" and pushing 240 pounds of gym-built muscle. He had a shaved head and a jaw that always looked like it was clenched around something bitter. He didn't teach. He didn't have to. He was the owner's cousin, and that made him untouchable. Everyone at Iron Line knew what Marcus was. He was the guy who cranked heel hooks past the tap on 19-year-old kids. He was the guy who chose the smallest woman in the room every round and called it helping her level up. He was the guy who, when someone finally complained to management, was gently reminded that Marcus was family and that maybe the complainer would be happier at a different academy. 3 purple belts had quit in the last year. 2 of them had been women. Nobody connected the dots out loud. Emma had rolled with him twice before. Both times she had walked to her car afterwards, trying to swallow the shake in her hands before her boyfriend saw. Tonight she had been hoping to pair up with Priya, another purple belt. But Priya had called in sick that morning. Emma tied her belt, took a slow breath, and told herself it was just 6 minutes. The head instructor, Coach Ramos, clapped his hands from the front of the room. "Round 9, folks. 6 minutes. Find a partner, and if you don't have one, raise your hand." Emma raised her hand out of habit, already scanning for another unattached body. She saw a blue belt named Trevor start to lift his arm, saw him make eye contact with something behind her, and saw his hand drop back down like he'd been shocked. She knew before she turned around. A shadow fell across her shoulder, and then a hand the size of a dinner plate landed on her trapezius, thumb digging into the muscle just enough to make her wince. "Emma, let's go, kid. I need someone who moves." Marcus's voice was warm and public, pitched exactly for the room to hear. To an outsider, it would sound like generosity. A black belt taking time to work with a smaller student. Emma had trained long enough to hear what was underneath it. It was the sound of a cat picking up a mouse. She could have said no. She had thought about it in the parking lot on the drive over, rehearsing the sentence. "I'd rather work with someone closer to my size tonight." But the words never actually made it out of her mouth in real life. Saying no to Marcus meant a conversation with Coach Ramos afterwards about attitude, about not being coachable, about how she was going to have a hard time getting her brown belt if she couldn't handle pressure. So she nodded and she stood, and she walked with him to an open square of mat near the mirror. They slapped hands. They bumped fists. The timer on the wall started its slow red countdown from 600. Marcus did not bother with the pretense of technique. He shot a lazy single leg, caught her ankle almost as an afterthought, and dumped her onto her back with the casual force of a man tossing a bag of laundry. Her shoulder blades hit the mat hard enough that a small involuntary sound came out of her throat. Before she could recover her guard, he was already inside it, hands walking up her ribs, thumbs digging deep between the bones in a way that had nothing to do with any technique she had ever been taught. She framed, she shrimped. She turned to her side, got an underhook, tried to work to her knees. He let her do it, watching, and then he stuffed her head with a snap down that whipped her neck forward hard enough to make her teeth click together. "Better," he said in the same warm coaching voice, "but you're slow tonight." He passed her guard by simply walking around her legs. He did not bother with any of the intricate mechanics that made jiu-jitsu what it was. He had 80 pounds on her, and he intended to use every one of them. His shoulder crashed into her jaw as he settled into side control, and the cross-face he applied was not the kind that shut down an escape. It was the kind that ground her cheekbone into the mat and made her eye water. "Breathe, Emma," Marcus said gently and pressed harder. 2 minutes and 30 seconds still remained on the clock. Across the room, near the front door, a man in a plain gray t-shirt shifted his weight and began to watch more carefully. The man in the gray shirt had been standing in the same spot for almost 11 minutes. He had a duffel bag by his feet and a set of car keys resting on top of it. He was not tall, maybe 5'10", and he had the kind of build that people walk past in airports without registering. His arms were lean rather than thick, his shoulders sloped naturally, and there was a slight roll to the way he stood, weight balanced across both feet in a way that most people would not notice and a few people would recognize instantly. He was 34 years old. His name was Ryan, and he was Emma's older brother. Ryan had flown in from Fayetteville that morning. Emma's wedding was in 6 weeks, and their mother had asked him, in the particular tone she reserved for requests that were not really requests, to come out early and help with a list of things. He had a tuxedo fitting in the morning, a lunch with their father's second wife on Thursday, and a rehearsal dinner venue to inspect on Friday. Tonight he had planned to pick Emma up from her gym, take her to dinner, and listen to her talk about seating charts. He had walked in with 15 minutes still on the clock for open rolls, and Emma had waved at him from across the mat and mouthed 10 minutes. He had nodded, set his bag down by the cubbies, and taken up a spot against the wall to wait. He had not planned on watching. He had planned on scrolling through his phone, but something about the way the big black belt had crossed the mat toward his sister had made him put the phone back in his pocket. Ryan had spent the last 12 years of his life inside a unit whose full name he did not say out loud in public. He had done 4 rotations in places whose names appeared in the news sometimes and more often did not. He had trained hand-to-hand under men who had killed other men with their hands. He had passed selection at an age when most of his high school friends were already talking about their 401ks. He did not have a black belt in anything. He had never competed. He had never worn a GI in his life until this current moment when he was watching one being used as a weapon. He watched Marcus grind the crossface into his sister's jaw. He watched Emma's left hand come up and tap Marcus's shoulder twice, quickly, unmistakably. He watched Marcus pretend not to feel it. He watched the timer on the wall tick down through 3:14. Ryan's face did not change. He did not uncross his arms. He simply began to catalog. Marcus was right-hand dominant. He carried his weight forward on the balls of his feet, which meant he could be pulled off balance backward with very little effort if you got underneath his center of gravity. His left ear was significantly more damaged than his right, which meant he probably slept on that side and probably favored his right for defense. His breathing was already elevated even though he was on top and doing almost no work, which meant his cardio was gym cardio, built on short rounds and long rests. Ryan noted all of this the way another man might note the weather. Emma tapped a third time. Her palm slapped against Marcus's deltoid in the clear, sharp cadence that every grappler on earth understands from their first week of training. Tap, tap, tap. It was not subtle. It was not deniable. 3 sets of eyes on the adjacent mat saw it happen and immediately looked somewhere else. Marcus adjusted his grip. He slid his forearm across her throat and cupped the back of her head with his other hand, sinking his weight into an arm triangle from side control. It was a legal submission. It was also, in this specific application, a punishment. He was not looking for the tap because the tap had already been given. He was looking for something else. The choke bit down. Emma's eyes went wide. She turned her chin, tried to bring her hand up to fight the grip, and Marcus rode her arm down with his knee, pinning it flat against the mat. She could not move her head. She could not clear the artery. Her free hand slapped harder, faster, the panicked staccato of a person who has crossed from training into something else. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. The rushing white noise started in her ears. She felt a strange, floating warmth spread down her spine. She saw Marcus's face above hers, calm and interested, and she understood with a clarity she would remember for the rest of her life that this man was enjoying himself. 4 seconds. The room began to tunnel. Then the pressure was gone. Marcus released the choke, sat up on his heels and looked down at her with the same warm coaching smile. He had let her hover on the edge and pulled her back at the last moment. He had done it on purpose. He had done it because he could. Emma rolled onto her side, coughing hard, her whole body shaking. A thin line of drool ran from the corner of her mouth. Her vision came back in pieces. She could hear the timer on the wall. It read 2:41. "You got to work on your composure," Marcus said, standing up and stretching his arms overhead like a man who had just finished a light warm-up. "You panic under pressure. That's why you keep getting stuck under bigger guys. You gotta breathe." He said it loudly. He said it the way a coach says something that is really a verdict. 2 white belts nearby nodded seriously, absorbing the wisdom. Emma sat up on the mat. Her hands were trembling too badly to untie her belt. She could not look up at anyone. The humiliation was worse than the choke. She had tapped. She had tapped the way she had been taught to tap in her very first class, and a black belt had held her under anyway, and everyone in this room had watched, and the story that would be told about it in the parking lot afterwards would be a story about her composure. Marcus turned away from her, cracking his neck to one side, then the other. He looked around the mat with the easy confidence of a man surveying his kingdom. His eyes landed on a small woman in a white belt near the far corner, a new student, maybe 21 years old, who had been at the gym for exactly 6 weeks. "Hey, Chloe," Marcus called out. "You're up next. Let's build some." "No, she isn't." The voice came from the wall by the cubbies. It was not loud. It was not aggressive. It carried the specific flat quality of a voice that had spent years giving instructions in situations where the wrong tone could get somebody killed. It cut through the ambient hum of the gym like a blade being drawn from a sheath. Every head in the room turned. Ryan pushed off the wall with his shoulder blades, took 2 unhurried steps forward, and stopped at the edge of the mat. He did not step onto it. He was still wearing his jeans and his gray t-shirt and his running shoes. He looked at Marcus the way a man looks at a piece of furniture he is deciding whether to keep or throw away. "She's not rolling with you," Ryan said. "Chloe isn't rolling with you either. You're done for the night." Marcus laughed. It was a real laugh, delighted, the kind of laugh a big man laughs when a small man says something that is about to be very funny. "I'm sorry, buddy. Who the hell are you?" "I'm her brother." Ryan's chin moved a quarter of an inch toward Emma, who was still on her knees on the mat, one hand at her throat. "And I watched you hold that choke for 4 seconds after she tapped. So I'm telling you, one time, that you're finished here tonight. Get your stuff and leave." The gym went entirely, absolutely still. 6 pairs of grapplers stopped moving in the middle of whatever they were doing. Someone's timer app kept beeping softly in the corner, and nobody reached to silence it. Coach Ramos, who had been correcting a triangle setup on the far mat, slowly stood up straight. Marcus's smile widened. This was, from his perspective, a gift. A civilian in street clothes walking onto his territory and issuing orders in front of the entire class. He rolled his shoulders back and took 2 steps toward Ryan, deliberately closing the distance until he was inside arm's reach, using his size the way he always used his size. He was accustomed to watching men shrink when he did this. It was one of his favorite parts of the day. Ryan did not shrink. He did not adjust his stance. He did not even seem to notice that a man 80 pounds heavier had just planted himself 2 feet from his face. His hands stayed loose at his sides. His weight stayed balanced across both feet. His eyes stayed on Marcus's eyes, and there was nothing in them at all. "Buddy," Marcus said, and his voice had dropped into a lower register now. The register he used with delivery drivers and with the parents of teenagers who came to complain. "I don't know what you think you saw. This is a combat sport. Your sister is a grown woman who chose to be on these mats. If she can't handle a submission, that's a conversation for her and her coach, not for some guy in Levi's who thinks he knows something. Ryan tilted his head, maybe half an inch. Keep in mind who I am. Marcus blinked. It was a strange sentence. It landed in the room in a way he could not immediately process. It was not a threat. It was not a boast. It was a piece of information, offered flatly, the way a man might tell you his flight number. Keep in mind who you are, Marcus repeated, half laughing. Ryan didn't answer. Coach Ramos crossed the mat with the heavy, deliberate stride of a man who owned the flooring under his feet. He was 51, a fourth-degree black belt, a former ADCC trials competitor whose framed photograph hung in the lobby next to a wall of certificates. He had thick forearms and a neck that had absorbed 25 years of pressure. He stopped between Ryan and Marcus with the practiced authority of a referee stepping into a corner. "Everybody take a breath," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were doing math. He looked at Emma on her knees. He looked at Marcus's smirk. He looked at the man in street clothes standing on his mat edge, and something in the way that man was standing made a small, quiet alarm start ringing in the back of his head. Ramos had trained with a lot of dangerous people over the years. Most of them stood exactly like this. Loose, balanced, boring to look at. "Sir," Ramos said, choosing the word deliberately, "I appreciate that you're upset. If your sister has a complaint, we'll talk through it in my office. But you can't walk onto my mats in shoes and tell my black belt he's leaving. That's not how this works." "He held a blood choke on her for 4 seconds after she tapped," Ryan said. "You saw it. Your instructor saw it. Everyone in this room saw it. And the reason nobody said anything is because the last 3 people who said anything don't train here anymore." He said all of this in the same flat, uninflected voice. He was not accusing. He was reciting. Ramos's jaw tightened. The accusation was accurate in a way that could not be argued with in public. He shifted tactics. "You want to make it right? You want to send a message? Fine. You're on my mats. Put on a rash guard. Roll with Marcus. 6 minutes. If you can make your point out here, I'll listen to it in my office afterwards." It was a trap, and everyone in the room knew it was a trap. It was also the only way for Ramos to keep his authority intact in front of 30 paying students. He needed the man in the gray t-shirt to either back down or get broken. "Cole, don't." Emma's voice came out of her raw throat as a rasp. She had gotten to her feet. She was holding onto the wall with one hand. "Ryan, don't. He's a 4th degree. Marcus took 2nd at Worlds. Please." Ryan looked at her for the first time since he had stepped forward, his face softened by a fraction that only she would have recognized. "It's all right, Em," he said quietly. Then he looked back at Ramos. "I don't need 6 minutes with him," Ryan said, nodding once at Marcus. "I need 2, and I'm not putting on a rash guard because I'm not here to train. When I'm done with him, I'll roll with you. Same terms." Ramos's face did not move, but something behind his eyes went very still. "Excuse me? You heard me." Ryan sat down on the edge of the mat and began unlacing his running shoes with unhurried fingers. "Him first, then you. Then my sister and I are going to dinner, and none of you are ever going to see either of us again." He set his shoes neatly beside his duffel bag. Ryan stepped onto the mat in his bare feet. He was still wearing his jeans and his gray t-shirt. He did not stretch. He did not roll his neck. He walked to the center of the square Marcus had chosen and stopped there with his hands loose at his sides, and he waited. Marcus was grinning now, openly, the grin of a man who had been handed something better than he had dared to hope for. He looked around the room, playing to his audience one last time, and he saw what he expected to see. 30 students watching, his cousin's gym behind him, his reputation about to be reinforced in the most public way possible. He shot his cuffs, cracked his knuckles, and dropped into a wide wrestling stance. "You sure about this, brother?" he asked. "Last chance to walk. I'm not going to go easy on you just because you're in denim." Ryan didn't answer. He was looking at Marcus's front foot. Coach Ramos held up his hand. 6 minutes. Submissions only, no strikes. Tap is a tap. He looked at Ryan when he said the last part, and Ryan almost smiled. Almost. Go! Marcus lunged. He came in the way big men come in when they are certain of themselves, chin down, hands reaching for a collar tie and an underhook, driving forward with his weight low and his hips loaded to shoot. It was a good takedown entry. It had won him matches at the state level for a decade. Ryan did not sprawl. He did not backpedal. He did not try to strip the grips. He stepped forward into the entry and did something that nobody in the room recognized in the moment because it did not come from any sports syllabus they had ever seen. His right hand shot to the back of Marcus's neck. His left palm caught Marcus's right elbow at the exact instant Marcus committed his weight forward, and Ryan's hips dropped and rotated by maybe 15 degrees. Marcus went off his feet. He did not go up in an arc, the way a suplex sends a man up in an arc. He went sideways and down all at once, his own momentum weaponized against him with a leverage so precise that it looked, from the perspective of the students watching, as though the mat had simply reached up and taken him. He hit the canvas on his shoulder blade and the back of his head at the same instant. Not hard enough to concuss, hard enough to reset his entire nervous system. His eyes went unfocused for half a second, the way a man's eyes go unfocused when he has been hit by a car he did not see coming. Ryan was already on top of him. He did not pass the guard. There was no guard to pass. He had landed in a position that was not side control and was not mount, a hybrid cross-body pin that put his sternum directly across Marcus's chest and his right knee inside Marcus's armpit and his left foot posted wide for base. It was not a position from any belt curriculum. It was a position from a manual that most of the room did not know existed. Marcus tried to bench press him off. His arms shook. Ryan did not move. He weighed 190 pounds, and on top of Marcus, he weighed 400. Ryan settled his weight. He was not sinking hips the way a jiu-jitsu instructor teaches side control pressure. He was doing something older and uglier. He had one bony point of contact against the base of Marcus's sternum, another against the soft tissue under Marcus's jaw, and a third against the inside of Marcus's shoulder joint. 3 pressure points, all applied at once, all calibrated to the exact edge of what a human body could absorb before it stopped cooperating. Marcus bucked. He was strong, genuinely strong, and he had a lot of experience escaping bad positions. He tried to hip escape to his left. Ryan's knee slid an inch and killed the space. He tried to underhook and roll to his right. Ryan's elbow was already there, blocking the frame. He tried to bridge straight up. Ryan let him lift, let him spend the oxygen, and then rode him back down when the bridge collapsed. 20 seconds in, Marcus was breathing through his mouth. 30 seconds in, his face was the color of raw beef. 40 seconds in, he made the sound. It was a small sound, a grunt, a wheeze, and then a thin, high-pitched note underneath it that nobody in the gym had ever heard him make before. It was the sound of a man realizing, for the first time in his adult life, that he was not going to be able to muscle his way out of something. Ryan's face did not change. He was not smiling. He was not scowling. He was breathing slow through his nose, in for 4, out for 6, the way he breathed in a hindsight at 3 in the morning when the wrong movement would end his life. His eyes were on the far wall. At the 1-minute mark, Marcus exposed his right arm. He did not mean to. It was a desperation frame, an attempt to shove Ryan's chin up and away, and it was the kind of mistake a black belt should not make. Ryan caught the wrist in his left hand, trapped the elbow against his own rib cage, and shifted his hips 90 degrees in one clean motion. It was an arm bar. It was set up so cleanly that 2 of the purple belts watching made a small, involuntary noise. The appreciative half grunt that grapplers make when they see a submission enter perfectly. He did not extend it. He did not crank. He held it at the exact position where Marcus's elbow joint was straight and loaded, and 1 more pound of pressure would separate the ligaments. He held it there and looked down at Marcus for the first time since the round had started. "Tap," Ryan said quietly. "Now." Same speed she did. Marcus tapped. He tapped with his free hand against the mat. 3 fast slaps, exactly the cadence Emma had used. Ryan held the position for 1 extra second, not 4. 1. Long enough for Marcus to feel the specific fear of a joint that belonged to someone else now. Then Ryan released the arm and stood up in a single fluid motion, taking 2 steps back to give Marcus space to roll away. Marcus did not roll away. Marcus curled onto his side, cradling his right arm against his chest, and made a sound that was somewhere between a cough and a sob. Ryan turned to Coach Ramos, who had not moved from his spot at the edge of the mat. "Your turn." Ramos was not smiling anymore. The math had been done. He had watched the takedown, and he had watched the pin, and he had watched the armbar, and none of those 3 things had belonged to any sport lineage he could identify. The takedown had come from a system that dealt with people wearing plate carriers. The pin had been calibrated for a man who might be reaching for a knife. The armbar had been finished the way you finish an arm when you actually intend to break it, and then decide, at the last available fraction of a second, not to. Ramos was 51 years old, and he had made a career out of reading rooms. He knew what he was looking at now. He also knew that 30 students were watching, and that his cousin was curled on the mat behind him, making small, wet noises. And that if he stepped back from what he had proposed, the gym he had built over 2 decades would have a different center of gravity by tomorrow morning. He nodded once, walked to the middle of the mat, and slapped hands with Ryan. "Same rules," Ramos said. His voice was steady, but a small tremor lived at the very back of it that only he could hear. 6 minutes, submissions only." "2," Ryan said. "Same as him." They started. Ramos was smarter than Marcus. He did not shoot. He did not commit his weight forward. He circled, hands up in a boxer's high frame, looking for grips, playing the long game the way a 4th-degree black belt is trained to play it. He was going to make the younger man come to him, and when the younger man came, he was going to use 2 decades of guard retention to reset the exchange over and over until his experience won. Ryan watched him circle for 6 seconds. Then he stepped in. He did not shoot either. He walked forward the way a man walks toward a door he intends to open. Ramos reached for a collar tie, which is what Ramos always did against pressure, and Ryan let him have it. He let the hand land on his neck. He let Ramos start to snap him down. And in the middle of Ramos's snap down, Ryan simply was not there anymore. He had slipped his head under the arm, threaded his own arm across Ramos's back, and taken a body lock so deep that Ramos's own hand was pinned behind his own hip. Ramos knew, in the way that only a lifetime grappler knows, that he had lost the position before he had ever consented to be in it. Ryan tripped him. It was not a throw. It was a foot placement, a hip turn, and gravity. Ramos went down on his back, and this time the man who landed on top of him did it with the specific, deliberate weight of a person who had been trained to make an enemy stop moving in an environment where the alternative was worse. Ryan did not chase a submission. He simply held Ramos down, chest to chest, cheek pressed to the side of Ramos's face. Every time Ramos tried to breathe in, Ryan took the space. At the 90-second mark, Ramos tapped. He tapped hard. Ryan released him instantly, rolled off, and stood up. The gym was silent in a way that had physical weight. Ryan walked to Emma. Emma was still standing against the wall, one hand at her throat, her belt half untied. Her eyes were wet and wide, and she was looking at her brother the way she had looked at him when she was 7 and he was 13, and he had walked into her bedroom during a thunderstorm and told her that the noise outside was only weather. Ryan crouched in front of her, and the man who had just methodically dismantled 2 black belts in front of 30 witnesses was gone. In his place was the person who had taught her to ride a bike in a cul-de-sac in 2004. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, look at me. You okay?" She nodded, and then she shook her head, and then she nodded again. Her voice came out as a whisper. "My throat. I know, we're going to get you to a doctor tonight, just to be safe. Blood chokes held past the tap can cause soft tissue damage that shows up hours later." He said it the way he said most things factually, without heat, but his hand on her shoulder was gentle. "Grab your bag. Leave the GI. You're never wearing it again." Emma nodded. She walked to her locker on legs that did not feel entirely like her own, and she pulled out her duffel, and she left the gi hanging on its hook. Ryan picked up his shoes in his own bag by the door. He did not put the shoes on. He carried them. Nobody in the gym spoke. Marcus was sitting up now, holding his arm, staring at a point on the mat 6 inches in front of his knees. Coach Ramos was on his side, breathing carefully, one hand splayed across his own ribs. 30 students were standing exactly where they had been standing when it started, and not one of them had moved. At the door, Ryan stopped. He turned back to face the room. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. "There are 3 women here tonight," he said. "There's my sister, there's Chloe in the corner, and there's the woman in the blue belt near the timer whose name I don't know. You all watched a man choke my sister unconscious on purpose, and none of you said a word, because he pays his dues on time and he's related to the owner. Think about that on the drive home. Think about who you were tonight." He looked at Ramos. "You had a good gym once. You don't anymore. You can build it back, or you can keep protecting your cousin. That's your call, but she was the third one. There won't be a fourth." He pushed the door open with his shoulder. Emma walked out under his arm. The door closed behind them with a soft pneumatic hiss, and the gym stayed silent for a very long time. Ego builds kingdoms on padded floors, and it convinces the men who stand at the top that the padding is what makes them dangerous. It isn't. The mat is a courtesy. The rules are a courtesy. The tap is a courtesy. And when a bully forgets that, all of it is a courtesy extended to him by people who could take it away. Sooner or later, someone walks in who has spent their entire adult life in rooms where none of those courtesies exist. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember that silence protects the wrong people. Drop a comment below and tell us, did Ryan go too far? Or did that gym finally learn the lesson it had been avoiding for years?